Hi, I'm Molly Haynes, and this is my tutorial on writing for the Internet of Things using React, PubNub, and Johnny 5. A couple caveats before I get started on this tutorial. The first one is that this tutorial assumes that you already know how to make an application for the browser using Node, Express, and React. I'm not going to spend any time on setting up the server or anything. I'm just using a boilerplate that I have saved. So you do need to have that knowledge in place before you get started. The other caveat is that I'm not an expert on any of this by any means. I just created this sort of cool thing with Arduino, and I wanted to share it in case anybody else wanted to do the same. So setup for this project, I'm using an Arduino Uno and some various bits and bobs. This project uses an RGB LED, and you can find a really good tutorial on setting that up on the internet right here. This article is by Tomomi Imura, who, fun fact, I Googled her, and she is the creator of HTTP Cats, so thanks to her. But she also wrote this really good article called Prototyping a Smart Device with Arduino and Node.js using Johnny 5. It's a great article. It inspired this project for me, but it does not use PubNub-React, so I kind of wanted to do my own spin-off of it using React. And in this article, you can find a really excellent setup for Arduino and the Arduino IDE. And then you can also find really clear and specific sort of diagrams helping you set up just a single RGB LED. And this is the setup, this is the guide I used to set up my LED for this project. So I'll include the link to this in the description of the video. So once that's set up, you can jump into the actual coding. Be prepared for some bumps with your actual Arduino. Don't be surprised if you need to like jiggle your resistors around a little bit or switch out your jumper cables. I found that not everything worked. If you're like me and this is just a fun thing for you to try because you want to experiment with Arduino, you're probably not using the most expensive materials, and that is what I found. Some of my cables are broken. My resistors don't really stay where they're supposed to stay, and so I have some problems with that. And you may as well, so just be aware if something's not working, it may not be your code. Okay. So the packages you'll need to install are here in my package JSON. It's really just 3 outside of your usual sort of React app setup. You'll need Johnny 5. That is, I assume if you're doing this project, you've done some Googling and you know that Johnny 5 is the language that allows us to interact with Arduino using JavaScript. So you'll need to install that. And then you'll also need to install PubNub and PubNub-React. And those are the libraries that are actually going to allow us to connect our Arduino to the Internet of Things. The general overview for this project, we really only have one sort of important file on the server and one important file on the client. On our server, we are calling this function that we're going to build that is the setup for our LED. That's the most important one there, and that's this LED file. And we'll go over this in more detail in a moment. So we're just calling that whenever the server starts up. And then on the client side, we have this component called sliders. And that is, in addition to handling the PubNub stuff, it's really just rendering these 3 sliders, a red slider, a green slider, and a blue slider, so that we can change the color of our LED. So that's the overview. Let's go ahead and actually take a look at the LED file. This is the function that we are calling when we start up the server to handle our the LED aspect of things. We are requiring PubNub, and then we're creating a new instance of PubNub. And when you create this new instance, you will need a subscribe key and a publish key, which you can get by going to PubNub's website and signing up. It's free. You get one key for free. So it's very easy. You just sign up and you get your keys right away. So you will need those. After that, we're requiring Johnny 5, because again, that's the language we're going to use to communicate to the board. And then we have the actual function itself that's kind of doing all the work. We're creating some variables, one for the LED and then one for red, green, and blue. We're calling board, which creates an object that represents our actual physical board. And then we're saying on ready, we want to console log that it's ready. That's obviously not necessary, but I find it informative. And then we're telling it that this variable LED is assigned to a new LED, because again, this is creating an object that represents our board, and we have an LED on our board. And we're telling it where, we're telling it what the pins are assigned to, what the pins do, basically. We're saying we have a red pin, we have red on 6, and we have green on 5, and we have blue on 3. And obviously, if you don't hook up your cables that way, it's not going to work. So hopefully you may need to adjust if you didn't follow the same tutorial that I mentioned to set up your Arduino. You'll need to adjust that accordingly. Then we are taking our PubNub instance and we're using the add listener method. This takes this object that you feed to add listener can have a couple different keys, right? In this one, I'm only including status and then console logging the status. That's not really necessary. I just find that informative, and it's nice to see. It's because we're using this, or presumably if you're doing this tutorial, you're using this technology for the first time. It's nice to see what's actually happening. So I'm just sort of console logging that out for now. And then the most important part is actually this message event. This is what's actually going to process the messages we're getting from the client side. So this function basically says, when you get this event, we're saying our message is our event.message. And if you're curious about this event object, you can obviously console log it out and see what it consists of for yourself. And then we're saying if we have LED, which hopefully we do because we've assigned it up here. If we have LED, we want red to equal, and then we're asking, is message.color red? Then we want red to equal the brightness in the message. Otherwise, it stays the same. Green, same thing, right? If the message color is green, then we set the brightness. Otherwise, we keep it the same. Same thing for blue. And then we use this LED.color method, which comes with Johnny 5, and that's how we actually change the color of our LED. In addition to adding the listener, we also need to subscribe to the correct channel. In this case, it's called Smart LED. That was, again, that variable came from the tutorial I mentioned earlier. You can call it whatever you want. It just needs to be consistent. So once that's set up, that's it for the server side. Obviously, you need to export that function and then call it when your server starts up. For the client side, we have just a normal, again, this is kind of boilerplate stuff, just a normal index that's rendering out our sliders component. And the sliders component itself looks like this. And you can see something familiar right away. We're importing PubNub-React. I'm also importing these keys. This is because I obviously have no intentions of deploying this. Keeping the keys secret for PubNub-React seems a little odd, and I didn't really want to get into it. They have this like access manager tool you can use to make sure those are encrypted, but I just stuck it in a get ignored file because I knew I wasn't going to deploy it, and it didn't seem relevant to the tutorial because I don't know. I just wanted to experiment with PubNub. I don't want to actually use it on anything right now. So I just stuck it in a get ignored file. So the constructor for our PubNub instance for PubNub-React happens in the constructor of our component. So right off the bat, when we are constructing our component, we create a new PubNub-React called this.pubnub, and we give it the exact same object that we used on the server side, the publish key and the subscribe key. And then we also use the pubnub.init method to make sure that that instance of PubNub is started. We also have a handle change function, and this is tied into our inputs, our slider inputs. We have the value connected to the state, and then we have onChange, and we call the function handle change. So when we call handle change, I'm just grabbing the color and the value from event.target. I'm using setState to update the state. And then I'm using the publish method of PubNub to publish a message to the smart LED channel, which is the same one we specified on the server side. And then the message, this will seem logical to you because we've already handled the message on the server side. So you've probably already guessed what the message looks like, but it does consist of color and brightness. And the color is obviously just a string, and the brightness is a number from 0 to 255. And we've mirrored those limitations in our input down here with min 0 and max 255, just to make sure we don't give it a color that it can't actually create. And that is the gist of it. That is pretty much all you have to do to create an LED using an Arduino that you could theoretically adjust the color of or turn on and off from anywhere in the world. Theoretically, it's got a ways to go, obviously, but that's kind of like the bare bones introduction to creating sort of a smart light using PubNub and Johnny 5. Thanks very much. You can find the link to this source code in the description, as well as the link to the article I mentioned, the other tutorial I mentioned, and I will probably include the boilerplate that I used to get this project started as well. Thanks very much.